The transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Tartarus 9. Inside the cargo hold, Dr. Rachel Oren gripped the safety rail until her knuckles turned white. Around her, 846 other humans sat in silence. Some prayed, some cried. Most just stared at nothing. 3 weeks ago, their colony ship had been intercepted near the disputed border zone. The Galactic Council had called it an illegal expansion into protected space. Rachel knew the truth was simpler. Humans were new to the galactic community. Humans were aggressive. Humans reminded too many species of their own evolutionary nightmares. So when the Council needed an example, humans were the obvious choice. The sentence had been delivered by Representative Ulmer, a being made entirely of crystal formations that pulsed with different colors when it spoke. Its verdict was simple. The humans would be exiled to Tartarus 9, a world where nothing survived. They would be given basic supplies. After that, nature would handle the rest. Planetary surface in 2 minutes, the automated voice announced in flat, translated tones. Prepare for deployment. Rachel looked across the hold at the faces around her. Engineers, farmers, teachers, children. None of them soldiers. None of them prepared for what waited below. Through the narrow viewports, she caught glimpses of the world beneath them. Purple storm clouds rolled across rust-colored continents. Lightning arced between clouds in patterns that seemed almost alive. The ship dropped lower. Rain hammered against the hull with sounds like bullets hitting metal. Not water, Rachel realized. The rain was acidic enough to strip paint off their landing pods. 30 seconds. David Cole, the chief engineer, pushed his way through the crowd to reach Rachel. His face was pale but determined. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "Whatever happens down there, we stick together. We pool resources. We share knowledge. That's how we survive." Rachel wanted to tell him they wouldn't survive. The Council had shown them the records. 17 other species had been exiled to Tartarus 9 over the past 2 centuries. The longest any group had lasted was 4 months. Most died within weeks, 10 seconds. Brace for impact. The landing was violent. Pods slammed into the ground hard enough to crack safety harnesses. Metal groaned. Someone screamed, then silence. Rachel's pod door blew open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The smell hit her first. Sulfur mixed with something organic and rotting. The air was thick, heavy, harder to breathe than Earth standard. She stepped out onto ground covered in black volcanic sand. Around her, other pods were opening. Humans stumbled out, some falling to their knees in the heavy gravity. Rachel felt it too. Every movement took more effort. Her bones ached under the extra weight. The landscape stretched before them like a vision of ancient Earth. Twisted trees with bark that looked like cooled lava. Massive ferns with leaves that dripped pale yellow fluid. In the distance, mountains rose toward the storm clouds, their peaks lost in purple haze. Then she saw the creatures. They moved at the edge of the clearing where the pods had landed. Low to the ground, 6 legs. Bodies covered in armored plates. Eyes that reflected the lightning like polished glass. There were dozens of them circling the human landing zone in absolute silence. "Nobody move," Rachel said loudly. "Stay near the pods." The creatures stopped circling. They sat on their haunches, watching, studying. One of them made a sound, low and resonant, that carried across the clearing. The others responded. They were communicating. Pack hunters, Rachel thought. Just like wolves, just like lions, just like humans once hunted. A child's voice broke the silence. "Mom, I'm scared." The nearest creature's head snapped toward the sound. Its muscles tensed. Rachel saw the moment it decided to attack. The creature launched itself forward with terrifying speed. David moved faster. He grabbed a piece of debris from the nearest pod and threw it. The metal panel spun through the air and slammed into the creature's side. The impact knocked it sideways. The creature rolled, recovered, and backed away. It made another sound. This one was different, surprised. The other creatures shifted. They hadn't expected resistance. In their experience, prey either ran or died. These new arrivals didn't either. Rachel's mind raced. She was a xenobiologist. She had studied predator behavior on 100 worlds. These creatures were intelligent. They were testing the humans, probing for weakness. If humans showed fear now, the creatures would attack. If humans showed aggression, the creatures might scatter but would return with reinforcement. There was a third option. Rachel stepped forward slowly. She kept her hands visible and empty. She made no threatening gestures. The nearest creature's eyes locked onto her. She could see its muscles coiling, ready to strike if she moved wrong. "We're not your prey," Rachel said quietly. She knew it couldn't understand her words, but tone mattered. Confidence mattered. "And we're not your enemy. This is our home now, too." The creature tilted its head. Behind it, the pack waited. Rachel took another step forward. Then another. She was close enough now to see the patterns in its armored plates. Close enough to smell its breath, hot and sharp. She knelt down slowly. Put herself at its level. Showed submission without showing weakness. The creature studied her. Minutes passed. Rain continued to fall, burning tiny marks into exposed skin. Lightning crashed overhead. Nobody moved. Finally, the creature made a soft sound, almost like a grunt. It backed away 3 steps. Then it turned and loped into the forest. The rest of the pack followed. David let out a breath he'd been holding. "What just happened?" Rachel stood up. Her legs shook from the adrenaline. "We just had our first conversation on Tartarus 9. Above them, in orbit, the Council monitoring station recorded the entire encounter. The automated systems flagged it as anomalous. Previous exile groups had either been killed in the first hours or had fled from the predators. The humans had done neither. In the clearing, Rachel gathered the colonists together. The children huddled close to their parents. The adults looked to her for guidance. "Listen carefully," Rachel said. "The Council sent us here to die. They think this planet will kill us like it killed every other species they dumped here." She looked around at the alien forest, at the storm clouds, at the acidic rain leaving marks on their skin. But here's what they don't know. Our Earth, was rated as a Class 7 Deathworld. We evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every single day. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and predators that made these creatures look friendly. Rachel pointed at the forest where the pack had vanished. "This planet is dangerous. But we're from Earth. Dangerous is what we know." Around her, faces began to change. Fear became something harder, something determined. "We're going to survive this," Rachel continued. "Not because we're stronger than other species. Not because we're smarter, but because humans are the most stubborn, adaptable, persistent creatures in the galaxy. And when you back humans into a corner, we don't give up." She looked up at the sky where she knew Council ships watched from orbit. "We're going to survive. And one day they're going to regret sending us here." In orbit, the monitoring station's AI logged another anomaly. Based on speech patterns and body language analysis, the humans were not behaving like a species facing extinction. They were behaving like a species preparing for war against a planet that had never lost. 15 months had changed everything. The clearing where the pods had crashed was now a settlement. Rough walls made from volcanic stone formed a protective barrier. Inside those walls, humans had built shelters from predator hides, stretched over frames of local wood. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children's laughter echoed between buildings. In orbit, the Council monitoring station's AI had sent over 300 reports flagged as impossible. Representative Ulmer reviewed them with increasing disbelief. The display showed current footage of the human settlement, a place called Last Stand according to their intercepted communications. Ulmer's crystal body pulsed red with confusion. "Run the survival analysis again." "Analysis complete," the AI responded. "Current human population, 847. Births recorded 12. Deaths 11, all from accidents in the first 2 months. No deaths from predation. No deaths from starvation. No deaths from disease." "That cannot be correct. Check the sensors." "Sensors are functioning within normal parameters. Visual confirmation matches bioscan data." Ulmer magnified the image. Human children played in an open area near the center of the settlement. But they were not alone. The creatures that had circled the landing zone now moved freely among the humans. One of the armored predators lay on its side while a small human child scratched behind its head plates. "They've domesticated the apex predators," Ulmer whispered. "That's not possible." In the settlement below, Dr. Rachel Oren walked through what had become known as the Strider pens. That's what they called the creatures now, Striders, the name fit. 6 legs meant they moved with a unique flowing gait that covered ground faster than any human could run. A young woman named Amy approached, leading her Strider on a braided leather leash. The Strider cub had been orphaned in the first month after a territorial dispute between adult males. Amy had bottle-fed it using processed local plants. Now the creature followed her everywhere. "Dr. Oren, the scouts are back," Amy said. "They found something you need to see." Rachel followed Amy to the eastern gate where 3 scouts waited. They looked excited and nervous at the same time. The lead scout, a former botanist named Peter, held out a collection bag filled with purple and green plants. "We found these growing near the thermal vents," Peter explained. "I've analyzed the cellular structure. Rachel, they're not just edible. They're nutritious. High protein, complex carbohydrates. If we can cultivate them, we could triple our food production." Rachel examined the samples. The leaves had a waxy coating that protected them from the acidic rain. The roots went deep, probably reaching underground water sources. "Can we crossbreed them with the earth seeds we brought?" "Already started trials," Peter grinned. Early results looked promising. This was how they survived. Not by fighting the planet, but by learning from it, by adapting to it, by becoming part of its ecosystem instead of trying to conquer it. Rachel headed toward the workshop where David Cole spent most of his time. The building had once been a cargo pod. Now it was filled with salvaged technology and local materials. David had become obsessed with understanding how the planet's electrical storms worked. She found him testing a new device connected to a series of metal rods extending through the roof. "Tell me you haven't electrocuted yourself again," Rachel said. David looked up, his hair standing on end with static. "Only twice today. New record." He gestured at the device proudly. "But look at this. The lightning here carries 3 times the voltage of Earth lightning. I've built capacitors using crystallized volcanic minerals. We can store enough power from a single storm to run the settlement for a week." "David, that's incredible. It gets better." He pulled out what looked like a crude exosuit frame. "With this power source, we can build suits that enhance human strength, compensate for the heavy gravity. Let us work in areas that are currently too dangerous." Rachel studied the design. It was brilliant. Rough, yes, but functional. Humans were doing what they always did, taking whatever resources were available and building tools, making the impossible possible. A warning bell rang across the settlement. 3 rings. That meant something large was approaching. Rachel and David rushed to the walls. Other humans were already there, weapons ready. Weapons they had forged from local metals and sharpened volcanic glass. Below the walls, the ground trembled. They came from the forest like a living landslide. Massive creatures 3 times the size of Earth elephants. Their bodies were covered in thick gray hide marked with natural armor plates. They had 4 legs like tree trunks and heads that lowered close to the ground as they moved. A migration herd at least 50 strong. "They're heading straight for us," someone said nervously. Rachel counted the creatures, watched their movement patterns. "They're following ancient migration routes that existed before we built here. So what do we do?" David asked. "We can't fight those things." "We don't fight them," Rachel said. "We redirect them," she called out orders quickly. "I need fire teams on the north wall. Small controlled burns, nothing that will spread. I need our striders positioned on the eastern approach. And I need every piece of metal we have that can make noise." The humans moved with practiced efficiency. They had learned to work together, to trust each other, to survive as a single unit rather than individuals. The fire teams lit piles of damp vegetation that created thick smoke. The creatures approaching from the west caught the smell and veered slightly east. The striders, responding to human commands, spread out on the eastern side. They didn't attack the massive herbivores. They simply moved in patterns that made the herd uncomfortable, made them want to go around. On the walls, humans banged metal against metal, creating noise, creating confusion, creating an obstacle the creatures wanted to avoid. Slowly, the herd shifted direction. They flowed around the settlement like water around a stone. The ground shook as they passed. One of the creatures came within 10 feet of the walls, close enough for Rachel to see the small eyes examining the human structures with ancient curiosity. Then they were past, moving south toward whatever destination their instincts drove them toward. The humans on the walls cheered. They had faced a force of nature and survived through intelligence rather than strength. It was a victory. In orbit, Ulmer watched the footage in silence. The AI had calculated that the humans should have been crushed. Instead, they had done something no other exiled species had managed. They had worked with the planet's natural systems. "Send a priority message to the Council," Ulmer said quietly. "Tag it as urgent." "What should the message contain?" the AI asked. Ulmer looked at the settlement below, at the walls that grew stronger each day, at the humans who moved with confidence through a world designed to kill them, at the predators that now protected human children. "Tell them we made a mistake," Ulmer said. Tell them the humans are not dying on Tartarus 9. The AI processed this. Then what are they doing? Ulmer's crystal body flickered through several colors before settling on a shade that indicated deep concern. They're thriving. In Last Stand, Rachel stood on the wall long after the others had returned to their work. She looked out at the forest that had tried to kill them, the storms that had tested them, the creatures that had become their companions. David joined her. You knew we could do this, didn't you? From the beginning, Rachel smiled. I knew we had a chance. Humans are good at two things, David. We're good at surviving, and we're good at turning our prisons into homes. She thought about the council ships watching from orbit, about the species that had sentenced them to death. Let them watch, Rachel said softly. Let them see what happens when you exile humans to a death world. We don't just survive it. We make it ours. Above them, a storm gathered. Lightning arced between clouds. But the humans no longer feared the storms. They had learned to harvest their power, and that made all the difference. 5 years had passed since the exile. What had been Last Stand was now simply called Homestead. The name change reflected the shift in human thinking. They were no longer holding out against death. They were building a future. The settlement had expanded beyond its original walls 3 times. Now it stretched across the valley floor with organized streets and permanent buildings. The population had grown to 1,200. Children born on Tartarus 9 ran through those streets with the same confidence. Earth children once ran through parks, but these children were different. Dr. Rachel Oren reviewed the medical data and what passed for the settlement's hospital. The young woman on the examination bed sat patiently while Rachel completed the scan. Her name was Lisa, age 6, born 4 months after the exile. Breathe deeply for me, Rachel instructed. Lisa inhaled. The scanner showed lung capacity 30% greater than Earth normal humans. Her bone density was higher. Muscle fiber structure showed signs of natural enhancement. The heavy gravity of Tartarus 9 was forcing evolutionary adaptations that should have taken generations. Am I sick? Lisa asked. Rachel smiled. No, sweetheart. You're perfect. Better than perfect, actually. And she was. The second generation of Homestead children were stronger, faster, more efficient at processing oxygen. They were becoming native to this world in ways their parents never would. Rachel finished the examination and watched Lisa run off to join her friends and their Strider companions. The creatures had integrated completely into human society. They guarded the settlement perimeter. They hunted alongside human teams. They even seemed to sense danger before humans could detect it. David Cole found Rachel outside the hospital. He looked exhausted but excited. You need to see what we found. He led her beyond the settlement walls to where a scouting team had set up a perimeter. In the center of their camp stood something that made Rachel's breath catch. A structure. Carved from solid stone, covered in symbols that had weathered but still remained visible. The architecture was clearly artificial, clearly intentional, and clearly very old. We found it 3 days north, David explained. There are more. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, spread across the entire continent. Rachel approached the structure slowly. She was a xenobiologist, not an archaeologist, but even she could recognize the implications. Someone lived here before. An entire civilization, David agreed. And from the erosion patterns, I'd estimate these structures are at least 10,000 years old. Maybe older. What happened to them? David pointed at symbols near the base of the structure. Rachel knelt down to examine them. The carvings showed figures that might have been the builders. Tall, thin bodies, multiple limbs. They stood in groups, surrounded by creatures that looked disturbingly similar to modern striders. Other carvings showed conflict, fire, destruction, the figures fleeing or falling. They failed, Rachel said quietly. They couldn't adapt fast enough. Or they adapted wrong, David suggested. Look at this symbol here. It appears in every structure we've found, always in the same position. The symbol showed a figure standing apart from others, isolated, alone. Rachel understood. They were individualists. When the planet tested them, they faced it alone instead of together. Exactly. And Tartarus 9 doesn't forgive that mistake. Rachel stood up, looking back toward Homestead, toward the settlement built on cooperation, on shared knowledge, on humans working together as a single organism when needed. We succeed because we learned from Earth's hardest lesson, she said. Humans survived because we built tribes. We hunted in groups. We shared resources. We protected each other. The council thought exile would break us, David said. But they sent us here as a community. That was their mistake. A commotion from the camp interrupted them. One of the scouts was pointing at the sky. Rachel followed the gesture and saw it. A ship descending through the atmosphere, but not a council design. This was smaller, sleeker, moving with deliberate caution. That's an intelligence vessel, David said. They finally decided to investigate in person. The ship landed 200 meters from the camp. A single figure emerged wearing an environment suit. The suit's design marked it as belonging to a Valtorian, one of the Council's primary intelligence species. Insectoid body structure, 4 arms, compound eyes. The figure approached slowly with hands raised in a gesture of peace. Rachel and David met them halfway. The Valtorian's translator device crackled to life. I am Officer Nara of the Council Intelligence Division. I request permission to enter your settlement and observe your operations. Rachel considered this. Why now? You've been watching from orbit for 5 years. The Council needs to understand how you survived. Other species are being considered for exile to Deathworlds. Your methods could save lives, David laughed, the sound bitter. Now you care about saving lives? I understand your anger, Nara said. What the Council did was unjust. I cannot change the past, but I can learn from it. Rachel studied the Valtorian's body language. Despite the alien physiology, certain signs of sincerity were universal. The slight lowering of the head, the open posture, the waiting for permission rather than demanding entry. You can observe, Rachel decided, but you work. Everyone in Homestead contributes. No exceptions. Nara's translator produced what might have been a surprised sound. I am here to document, not to labor. Then you're not here at all, Rachel said flatly. We don't carry dead weight on Tartarus 9. You want to understand us? Work beside us. Learn why we survived when others failed. Nara was silent for a long moment. Then the Valtorian reached up and removed the helmet. The environment suit was designed to protect against the planet's hostility. Taking it off was a gesture of trust, of commitment. I accept your terms, Nara said. Over the next 3 weeks, Nara experienced life in Homestead. The Valtorian learned to process local food, learned to work in the heavy gravity, learned to move among striders without fear, learned the 100 small skills that humans had mastered through necessity. On the 21st day, Nara's ship experienced a catastrophic failure during an electrical storm. The vessel crashed in the forest 3 kilometers from Homestead. Nara survived but was injured, trapped in the wreckage. Human rescue teams deployed immediately. They moved through the storm with practiced efficiency. The striders led the way, their senses guiding humans through conditions that would have been impossible to navigate alone. They found Nara pinned beneath a collapsed bulkhead. The Valtorian's green blood indicated serious injury. Without medical treatment, Nara would die within hours. David used a portable exosuit to lift the bulkhead while Rachel administered emergency care. They stabilized Nara and carried the Valtorian back to Homestead through the storm, through conditions that would have killed any of them if they had been alone. In the hospital, while Rachel worked to save Nara's life, David stood in the rain outside. He looked up at the sky where he knew council ships watched. Do you see now? He asked the watching universe. This is why we survived. Because when one of us falls, all of us carry them home. Nara recovered over the following days. The Valtorian sat in the hospital watching humans work, watching children play with creatures that should have been deadly predators, watching a community that functioned with a level of cooperation Nara had never seen. On the day Nara was cleared to leave the hospital, the Valtorian found Rachel in her office. I must send a report to the council, Nara said. And what will you tell them? Nara's compound eyes reflected the light from the window. I will tell them the truth. That humans did not simply survive Tartarus 9. They conquered it. They turned a Deathworld into a home. And in doing so, they became something the galaxy has never seen before. What's that? Rachel asked. A species that grows stronger through hardship instead of weaker. A species that cooperates instinctively even when competition would be easier. A species that looks at the impossible and sees only a problem to solve. Nara paused, trying to find the right words. I will tell them that exiling humans to Tartarus 9 was the worst mistake the Council has ever made. Not because it was cruel, but because it created something far more dangerous than the primitives they tried to eliminate. And what did it create? Rachel asked. Nara looked out the window at Homestead. At the walls. At the humans and Striders working together. At the children who knew nothing but this harsh world and thrived in it anyway. It created Deathworlders who are no longer afraid of death. Rachel smiled. Tell them one more thing. Tell them we remember, and we don't forgive easily. Nara left Homestead 2 days later in a rescue ship sent by the Council. The Valtorians' report caused chaos in the Council chambers. And far away, near the galactic core, something ancient stirred in the darkness between stars. Something that would make the galaxy wish they had more Deathworlders on their side. The first world died in 6 hours. The Galactic Council emergency session convened in chaos. Representatives from 200 species filled the chamber, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Fear filled the air like smoke. Representative Ulmer's crystal body pulsed red as images played across the central display. The world of Caldera Prime, home to 18 billion Harvan people. The footage showed cities burning, ships fleeing into orbit, and then nothing. Just empty buildings and streets covered in strange crystalline growth. The entities emerged from a spatial rift near the galactic core, the military commander explained. His species was Gren, evolved from pack hunters, but even his warrior heritage couldn't mask the tremor in his voice. We're calling them void wraiths. They consume biological matter and convert it to more of themselves. They exist partially out of phase with normal space. Conventional weapons pass through them. Another representative spoke up. How many are there? Unknown. The rift continues to expand. More emerge every hour. A third world's distress signal cut off mid-transmission. The chamber fell silent. Ulmer's body shifted through colors rapidly, a sign of deep distress. We need options, anything. We could evacuate the core worlds, someone suggested. To where? They spread faster than we can retreat. What about the Krell battle fleet? Already engaged. They lost 40% of their forces in the first confrontation. The Wraiths phased through their shields and hulls like they weren't there. The debate continued for hours. Species argued, plans were proposed and rejected. The death toll climbed into the billions. Finally, Ulmer spoke the words everyone had been avoiding. What about the humans? The chamber reacted immediately. Outrage, disbelief, but also grudging consideration. They're exiles, a Harvan representative protested. Criminals. They're survivors, Ulmer countered. They've lived on a Class 10 Deathworld for 5 years. They've adapted technologies we don't understand. They've formed bonds with creatures that killed trained warriors. You want to arm the species we tried to eliminate? Ulmer's body turned dark blue, the color of grim determination. I want to survive. And right now, humans are the only species in the galaxy who specialize in surviving the impossible. The vote took 12 minutes. The motion passed by narrow margin. The Council would offer humans full pardons and citizenship rights in exchange for military service against the Void Wraiths. Nobody mentioned that it was essentially a death sentence. Just a different kind than the first exile. The extraction fleet arrived at Tartarus 9 3 days later. Commander Rylus of the Extraction Corps led the ground team. His species was Tholian, large and heavily armored, built for war. Rylus had expected to find survivors grateful for rescue, broken people desperate for salvation. What he found instead made him reconsider his entire understanding of human psychology. Homestead had grown into a proper city. The walls were 10 meters high and reinforced with metal plating. Defensive towers overlooked the approaches. Striders patrolled the perimeter alongside armed humans wearing powered exosuits that made them look like mechanical warriors. The humans didn't look like exiles. They looked like soldiers. Rachel Oren met Rylus at the main gate. She wore simple work clothes but carried herself with the confidence of someone who had earned her authority through action rather than appointment. Commander Rylus, she said. You're here about the Wraiths. Rylus blinked in surprise. How do you know about the Wraiths? We monitor Council communications. Did you think we'd stay isolated forever? Rachel gestured toward the city. We know what's happening at the core. We know the Council is losing. Rylus decided directness was the best approach. The Council offers full pardons, citizenship rights, reparations. In exchange, we need soldiers. You need cannon fodder, Rachel corrected. You need someone expendable to throw at a problem your military can't solve. I won't lie to you. The mission is dangerous. Survival rates are low. Rachel looked back at her city, at the people who had built lives from nothing. At the children playing with striders in the streets. At everything they had created. "Give me an hour," she said. The settlement council met in the central hall. 20 humans representing different aspects of Homestead society. Engineers, scientists, farmers, parents, warriors. Rachel laid out the situation. The void wraiths, the council's offer. The almost certain death that awaited anyone who volunteered. "They left us here to die," someone said angrily. "Now they want us to die for them?" "Innocent people are dying," David Cole countered. "Species that had nothing to do with our exile. Children, families, entire worlds. Why should we care?" Rachel spoke quietly. "Because we're human, and humans protect the weak, even when the weak don't deserve it. Even when it costs us everything." The debate raged for 45 minutes. Finally, Rachel called for volunteers. She expected maybe 100 to step forward. 400 raised their hands. Rachel felt something break inside her chest. Pride and grief mixed together. These people, her people, were choosing to walk into hell for a galaxy that had tried to eliminate them. She addressed Rylus with eyes that held no forgiveness but absolute determination. "We'll help. On 3 conditions. Full pardons for everyone, citizenship rights for all humans, including those who stay here, and reparations paid to Homestead to ensure the community survives." Rylus agreed without hesitation. He had no leverage, and they both knew it. "One more thing," Rachel added. "We bring our striders. We bring our equipment. We fight our way. No interference from Council Military Command. That's irregular. That's non-negotiable. Your way is losing. Our way kept us alive on Tartarus 9. You want our help, you accept our methods." Rylus looked at the humans preparing for deployment. They moved with practiced efficiency. Checking equipment. Saying goodbye to loved ones. Preparing to face death with calm acceptance. He had commanded troops from dozens of species. He had never seen soldiers prepare for battle with this kind of quiet intensity. "Agreed," Rylus said. The deployment took 2 days. 400 humans boarded the transport ships. Each wore powered exosuits built from Tartarus 9 technology. Each carried weapons designed to channel electrical energy, the only thing they had found that could disrupt the Wraith's phasing ability, and each was accompanied by a strider. The creatures seemed to understand they were going to war. Their usual playfulness had been replaced by focused alertness. Amy, now 21 and a full warrior, led one of the squadrons. Her strider walked beside her, a fully grown predator that had bonded to her as a cub. Together they were something unique, something the galaxy had never seen, a human and an apex predator working as one. Rachel stood in the command center watching the deployment. David joined her, his own exosuit prepped and ready. "You know, most of us won't come back," David said. "I know." "And you're still going?" Rachel looked at him with eyes that had seen 5 years of hell and had refused to break. "The Council sent us to Tartarus 9 to die. We survived. They're sending us to the Wraiths to die. We'll survive that too. Because that's what humans do, David. We survive, and then we make them regret underestimating us." Officer Nara watched from the observation deck as the human ships prepared to jump to light speed. The Valtorian had been assigned as liaison to the human forces. It was meant as an honor. It felt like a death sentence. Nara sent one final message to the Council. "You created something terrifying on Tartarus 9, not because you made humans stronger, but because you made them stop caring about your approval. They fight now because they choose to, not because you command it. And a human who fights by choice is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." The message was logged and filed. Nobody in the Council truly understood what it meant. Not yet. The human fleet jumped to lightspeed, carrying 400 volunteers toward a war they would probably lose. Behind them, Homestead continued its daily routine. The walls grew higher. The children grew stronger. The striders grew more numerous, and if the 400 didn't return, there would be 4,000 to replace them, because Tartarus 9 had taught humanity its final lesson. You cannot kill what refuses to die, and humans had decided, 5 years ago, that they would never die quietly again. Threshold Station hung in space like a broken tooth. The massive defense platform had been built to protect the approach to the core worlds. Now half its sections were dark, venting atmosphere into the void. Crystalline growths covered the outer hull where void wraiths had breached and fed. The human transport ships arrived in the middle of a desperate battle. Council forces retreated on all sides. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Distress signals filled every communication channel. Rachel watched from the command deck as Commander Rylus coordinated the defense, or tried to. His orders were ignored as captains made independent decisions to flee or fight. The unified front had collapsed into chaos. Their command structure is breaking down, David observed. They're not used to fighting something that ignores their technology. Rachel activated the human command channel. All squads, this is Orrin. We deploy in 5 minutes. Remember your training. Trust your striders. Watch each other's backs. The responses came back immediately. Calm. Professional. Ready. The Council military leadership had assigned humans to a diversionary assault, a suicide mission meant to draw Wraith attention while the main forces regrouped. Rachel had read the tactical brief and recognized it for what it was. They were still expendable in the Council's eyes. She didn't bother arguing. Let them underestimate humans one more time. The drop pods launched with Amy's squad leading the assault. The pods punched through Threshold Station's damaged hull and into the interior corridors. Humans emerged in combat formation, striders flowing around them like liquid shadow. The Wraiths came immediately. They materialized from the walls themselves, creatures of crystalline nightmare that existed partially outside normal space, long limbs that ended in blade-like projections, bodies that shimmered and phased, making them nearly impossible to target. Council soldiers had broken and ran from these creatures. They had watched their weapons pass harmlessly through Wraith bodies and had lost the will to fight. Humans were different. Amy's strider sensed the Wraith before it fully materialized. The creature lunged at Amy, but the strider intercepted, jaws clamping onto something that shouldn't have been solid. The strider's teeth found purchase where conventional weapons failed. The predator had evolved on Tartarus 9 hunting creatures that could camouflage and phase through vegetation. To the strider, Wraiths were just another prey species. Amy fired her electrical weapon at point-blank range. The charge disrupted the Wraith's phasing ability for a split second. Just long enough. The creature became fully solid and vulnerable. Her squad's weapons tore into it with conventional rounds. The Wraith fell, crystalline body shattering against the deck. They can be killed, Amy transmitted. Striders can track them. Electrical disruption makes them solid. Concentrate fire when they phase in. The information spread through human squads instantly. Tactics adapted in real time. What the Council saw as impossible became just another problem to solve. Squad after squad pushed deeper into Threshold Station. The Wraiths were numerous, but humans had something the creatures didn't expect. Experience fighting on a death world where everything wanted them dead. Where survival required constant adaptation. Where giving up was never an option. Daniel, a squad leader and former engineer, led his team through the station's lower levels. Intelligence had identified a Wraith nest somewhere in the service tunnels. Council forces had refused to enter the confined space where Wraiths held every advantage. Daniel's squad entered without hesitation. The tunnels were dark, narrow, filled with Wraiths that attacked from every direction. Normal soldiers would have panicked, would have been overwhelmed. Humans used the environment. They set up choke points, used their striders' senses to predict attacks, fought with a combination of high-tech weapons and brutal close combat techniques learned from 5 years on Tartarus 9. When a Wraith got past their firing lines, humans didn't retreat. They pulled knives forged from volcanic glass and fought hand-to-hand. Or hand to whatever Wraiths had. They took wounds that should have been crippling and kept fighting through sheer stubborn refusal to die. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't heroic. It was desperate, brutal, and effective. The nest was destroyed using improvised explosives built from station materials and Tartarus 9 technology. The explosion collapsed 3 tunnel levels and eliminated hundreds of Wraiths. Daniel's squad took 30% casualties. None of them complained. They had volunteered knowing the odds. From the command deck, Rylus watched the human assault with growing shock. The diversionary attack had somehow become a successful offensive. Humans had accomplished in 3 hours what Council elite forces had failed to do in 3 days. How are they doing this? He asked Rachel. Rachel didn't take her eyes off the tactical display. Because we learned on Tartarus 9 that the universe doesn't care about fair. It doesn't care about our limitations or our fears. It only cares about results. So we get results. But the casualties are acceptable to soldiers who volunteered. Every human on those ships chose to be here. We're not conscripts. We're not following orders because we have to. We fight because we decided innocent species don't deserve to die for the Council's failures. The battle raged for 18 hours. Humans pushed through sections of the station that had been written off as lost. They cleared wraith nests. They rescued trapped Council soldiers who had been hiding in sealed compartments. And they did it while taking losses that would have broken any other military force. Amy's squad was pinned down in a cargo bay, surrounded by wraiths on all sides. Her strider had taken a wound protecting her. 2 of her squad mates were dead. 3 more were injured. "Command, this is Squad 7, Amy transmitted. "We're cut off. Multiple hostiles. Requesting support," Rachel's voice came back immediately. "Support is 15 minutes out." "Can you hold?" Amy looked at her remaining squad mates. At her wounded strider, who still positioned itself between her and danger. At the wraiths gathering for another assault, she thought about Homestead, about the children playing in safe streets because humans had refused to let a Deathworld kill them, about everything they had built from nothing. "We'll hold," Amy said, and they did. When reinforcements arrived 15 minutes later, they found Squad 7 still fighting, still standing. Bodies of dead wraiths covered the cargo bay floor. The humans were bloodied, exhausted, barely conscious, but alive. Intelligence analysis revealed the wraith's origin point, a primary rift near an asteroid station that had been converted into some kind of dimensional anchor. The rift had to be collapsed from inside the station. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The radiation alone would be fatal. The wraith concentration around the rift would be overwhelming. And even if someone reached the anchor point, the energy required to collapse the rift would likely destroy the entire station. Rachel volunteered immediately. "I'll lead the team," Rylus objected. "You're the human commander. You're needed here. I'm needed where I can do the most good, and closing that rift does more good than anything else I could accomplish." She selected 50 volunteers. Every human on the station raised their hand. She chose the ones with the most technical knowledge and the most combat experience. David was among them. So was Amy and her strider. They boarded a single assault ship and headed toward the rift. Behind them, the Council fleet regrouped. Human squads continued clearing Threshold Station. The battle continued, but everyone understood that what happened at the rift would determine everything. Officer Nara stood in the observation bay watching the human ship approach the rift. The Valtorian had fought alongside humans for the past day, had seen them do things that shouldn't be possible, had watched them refuse to accept defeat even when logic said they should. "They're going to die," Nara said quietly. "Maybe," Rylus agreed, "but they'll die making a difference. That's all any soldier can ask for." Nara's compound eyes reflected the light from the rift. "No, that's all Council soldiers ask for. Humans ask for more. They ask to win. And somehow they keep doing it." The human ship disappeared into the rift's edge, swallowed by dimensional energy that tore at the fabric of space itself. On Tartarus 9, the people of Homestead looked up at the stars. They couldn't see the battle, couldn't know if their soldiers lived or died, but they knew humans had faced the impossible before. On a world that tried every day to kill them, in storms that could destroy ships, against creatures that should have been unstoppable, and humans had survived. So they waited with the quiet confidence of a species that had learned the universe's greatest secret. Nothing is truly impossible. Some things just take longer to achieve, and humans had all the time in the world, because they had learned to make Deathworlds their homes, and once you master death, nothing else can truly threaten you. The asteroid station pulsed with energy that made reality itself scream. Rachel's team moved through corridors that shifted and changed as dimensional barriers weakened. Wraiths swarmed from every shadow, materializing faster than the humans could kill them. The radiation meters on their suits had stopped working an hour ago. The readings had gone beyond measurable. 200 meters to the anchor point, David transmitted. His voice was strained. They were all dying slowly from radiation exposure. But slowly was better than quickly. Amy's strider took point, sensing wraiths before they fully materialized. The creature was wounded, limping, but still fought with the ferocity of a predator protecting its pack. Behind them, human soldiers fell one by one. Not from wraith attacks alone, but from the combination of combat and radiation. 20 of the 50 were dead. Another 15 were wounded too badly to continue. Rachel made the decision. Wounded, stay here. Set up a defensive position. The rest of us push forward, nobody argued. The wounded soldiers took position in a junction, weapons ready. They would hold as long as they could. Buy time for the others to reach the anchor. Rachel led the remaining 15 deeper into the station. The walls around them had started to dissolve. Through the gaps they could see the rift itself. A tear in space that showed glimpses of other dimensions, other realities. Some beautiful, some horrifying, all deadly. There, David pointed. The anchor point sat in a chamber that existed half in normal space and half in whatever realm the wraiths came from. A massive crystalline structure that channeled dimensional energy like a heart pumping blood. Wraiths surrounded it. Hundreds of them, protecting the source of their invasion. We can't fight through that many, someone said. Rachel looked at her team. 15 humans and 7 striders, all wounded, all dying from radiation. All aware this was the end, she smiled. We don't have to fight all of them. We just have to reach the anchor. David, how long do you need? David studied the structure through his suit's sensors. 5 minutes to set the charges. Another minute to arm them. 6 minutes. Rachel checked her weapon. We can buy you 6 minutes. Amy stepped forward. I'll go with David. My strider can sense if more wraiths approach. Rachel nodded. She organized the remaining soldiers into a firing line. When we move fast. Throw everything we have at them. Electrical weapons to disrupt their phasing. Conventional weapons when they solidify. And if they get close, we finish them with knives. She looked at each face. Humans from different backgrounds. Different lives. United by 5 years on Tartarus 9 and the understanding that some things were worth dying for. The Council sent us to a Deathworld to die, Rachel said quietly. We survived. They sent us to the Wraiths to die. We're about to prove them wrong again. Because humans don't die. We just adapt to new challenges. She raised her weapon. For Homestead. For every species the Wraiths have killed. For every innocent life we can save. For the galaxy that tried to kill us and ended up creating the soldiers it needed. For Earth, someone added. For Tartarus 9, another said. For humanity, they said together. The assault was beautiful in its violence. Humans charged across open ground toward impossible odds. Striders ran alongside them. Predators fully committed to the hunt. Electrical weapons created a web of lightning that disrupted wraith phasing. When the creatures solidified, bullets tore through crystalline bodies. Wraiths fell by the dozens, but there were hundreds more. David and Amy reached the anchor point. David's hands moved with practiced precision, placing shaped charges built from station materials and Tartarus 9 technology. Amy and her strider stood guard, killing anything that got close. The defensive line bought them the time they needed. Humans fell one after another. Each death bought seconds. Each second brought David closer to finishing. Rachel felt something pierce her side. A wraith limb that had phased through her armor. She grabbed it with her bare hands, holding the creature in place while another soldier shot it. The wraith died. Rachel fell to one knee. 4 minutes, David transmitted. Rachel forced herself to stand. Around her, only 5 other humans still fought. They formed a tight circle, backs to each other, firing in all directions. This was how humans had survived on Earth. This was how they had survived on Tartarus 9. Together, refusing to break. 5 minutes, David called. 2 more soldiers fell. Rachel and 3 others remained. They were out of electrical ammunition, down to conventional weapons and knives. The striders fought with wounds that should have been fatal. 6 minutes. Charges set. Moving to minimum safe distance. Rachel activated the team channel. All units fall back to the entrance corridor. We're about to collapse this station. The survivors retreated in fighting withdrawal. David and Amy joined them. Together they ran through corridors that no longer fully existed. Behind them, wraiths pursued in massive numbers. They reached the junction where the wounded had made their stand. Only 3 of the 15 were still alive. Still fighting. Transport is inbound, Rachel transmitted. Pick up in 90 seconds at the outer docking bay. They ran. Wounded helping wounded. Striders carrying humans who could no longer walk, fighting every step of the way. The transport ship appeared, Council military marking on its hull. The pilot was a young officer who had watched humans fight and had volunteered for the pickup mission. Probably a death sentence. Humans and striders piled into the cargo bay. The ship launched immediately. Behind them, the anchor charges detonated. The explosion was visible across 3 systems. The rift collapsed with a dimensional shockwave that destroyed the asteroid, station and everything within 10,000 kilometers, including hundreds of thousands of wraiths. The transport ship barely made it to minimum safe distance. The shockwave hit them hard enough to crack the hull, but they survived, 7 humans, 3 Striders, out of 50 who had started the mission, but the primary rift was closed. The Wraith invasion could still be contained. Billions of lives had been saved. The galaxy learned that day what humans were truly capable of. The Council held an emergency ceremony 3 days later. Rachel and her survivors were honored as heroes, given medals, offered positions in the Council military command, promised everything the Council could offer. Rachel stood before the assembled representatives with bandages still covering her radiation burns. She looked at Ulmer, at Rylus, at Nara, at the species that had sentenced humans to death twice and had been saved both times. "We accept full pardons for all humans," Rachel said clearly. "We accept citizenship rights and reparations. But we don't accept positions in your military. We don't want your medals. We don't want to be part of your system." The Council chamber fell silent. "What do you want?" Ulmer asked. Rachel smiled. "We want to go home. To Tartarus 9, to Homestead. To the world you meant to be our grave but became our greatest achievement. But you could have so much more." A representative protested. "You've proven yourself. You could join the Council as equals." "We don't need your approval to be equals," Rachel said. "We proved that on Tartarus 9. We proved it again against the Wraiths. Humans don't need the Council's permission to be great. We just need you to stop getting in our way." She looked around the chamber. "But we will help. When species need training for Deathworld operations, when the next impossible threat appears, when the galaxy needs soldiers who refuse to accept defeat, call us, we'll answer. Why?" Ulmer asked. "After everything we did to you, why would you help us?" Rachel thought about the children of Homestead playing in safe streets, about the Striders that had become family, about 5 years of impossible survival that had forged humans into something new. "Because that's what humans do," she said simply. "We protect those who can't protect themselves, even when they don't deserve it, even when it costs us everything. That's what makes us human." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Stop calling Tartarus 9 a death world. That's our home. And it's not trying to kill us anymore." "What would you call it?" Nara asked. Rachel smiled. "Paradise. Dangerous paradise. But paradise nonetheless." 6 months later, Homestead had grown into a proper city. The walls had been expanded again. New settlements were being established across the continent. Human population had reached 3,000, with more arriving as refugees and volunteers from Earth. The Council had offered a formal treaty. Humans would maintain Tartarus 9 as an independent world. In exchange, they would train Council soldiers in survival techniques, would serve as rapid response for extreme threats, would be the galaxy's experts on the impossible. Rachel stood on the city walls watching the sunset. The sky was purple and orange. Lightning danced in distant clouds. A pack of Striders ran through the valley below, hunting in patterns that young humans had learned to predict and join. David joined her. "The first class of Council trainees arrives next week. 50 soldiers from 20 different species. They want to learn how we survived." "We'll teach them," Rachel said. "Not because we owe them anything, but because the next time an impossible threat appears, the galaxy should be ready." "Do you think there will be a next time?" Rachel looked at the stars, at the vast galaxy that had tried to break humanity, and had only made them stronger. "There's always a next time. But that's okay. We're human. Impossible is just what we do between breakfast and lunch." In orbit, Officer Nara watched Homestead through long-range sensors. The Valtorian had been assigned as permanent liaison to the human settlement. It was meant as a punishment. It felt like a privilege. Nara sent a final report to the Council. Humanity's greatest weapon is not their technology or their tactics. It is their absolute refusal to accept limitations. They look at death worlds and see homes. They look at extinction and see opportunities. They look at impossible odds and see problems to solve. The Council tried to eliminate them and created the galaxy's greatest defenders. History will judge whether that was our greatest mistake or our greatest achievement. On Tartarus 9, human children played with Striders in streets built on volcanic rock. They laughed in gravity that would crush softer species. They thrived on a world that had killed everyone else. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy of a truth as old as evolution itself. Life finds a way. But human life doesn't just find a way. It makes a better one.